All right, getting ready to do the seal coat on the bottom and the sides. I kind of made more. I usually do that. I made a little bit more than I really wanted to of the epoxy. So the one thing about if you're doing the epoxy, make sure you mix it really, really well. So this has been mixed for 4 minutes. It is the, it's over here. It is the Total Boat tabletop epoxy. So essentially the same stuff over here. It is a little older, so if you look over there, I think it's the hardener is a little yellow. Not real. It should be okay, but anyway, I'm just doing it for the bottom and the sides. Usually I would level this all out, especially if I'm doing a flood pour. But even though there's that much, I'm not really intending on doing a flood pour. The purpose of this particular one is to basically just get it covered and sealed up. I've already put sanding sealer on this, so hopefully I don't have to fight too many bubbles, but it's essentially just to give a coat of adhesion for the flood coat to attach to. So that's really kind of the purpose of it now. Basically what I plan on doing is I've got some little brushes down here. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pour the top out, and then whatever extra I have, I'll use these to spread it out, and then whatever extra I have, I'll get some little brushes out and get it around the side. I need to pay attention to that so that I'm not leaving foam. Anyway, my stuff's getting ready to go, so it's not hot or anything. Well, it's getting warmer, so I better get it used. There you go. I couldn't really video that for you guys. Sorry about that, but my cameraman's not here, or my wife isn't here. But essentially, just poured it on there with a cup, and then you got to use one of these. So you'll see little epoxy spreaders. They hardly ever come with teeth. When you're doing a spread, you want to make sure you get the teeth out, and make sure that you have you have a spreader with teeth. The other thing is I'm using this little brush. In the trash it goes. That's to try to get the drips, like that one there, spread out on the sides, because I'm using the drips or the overrun to essentially go. You also see, even with the spreader, you end up kind of with these little grooves right here. So I'm going to very carefully keep rolling it around, because I know I'm sure you all have seen where they're like, oh, this stuff self-levels. The reality is it does self-level. Depends on your definition of self-leveling, right? This has got the consistency of molasses. It will self-level, but it's also curing. So it's doing a little bit more than self-leveling. So yeah, you got to stay on it and try to get it going. Now, if you notice, as I did that, I made bubbles. So you essentially have to hit the bubbles with some sort of heat source. I have a heat gun downstairs that when I do the flood coat I'll be using. But for now, just a little butane lighter. And really what we're on at the moment is just trying to make sure that this, because this is just a seal coat, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just kind of making sure that the bubbles don't pop up. So I'm on bubble watch. That's what I always call it. And it's not perfect by any means. I do have this little line right here. I can heat it up. I have to be very careful about that though, because you can heat it up to get it to flow, but at the same time, if you get this stuff too hot, because it is somewhat of a exothermic reaction. Look at this. I don't even know what that is or where that came from, but I don't want it on my thing, so whatever it is, big giant booger fell off there. So you got to watch that too. A lot of people will put like big tents or whatever over this stuff. I don't know. I'm not that much of a perfectionist. Anyway, so really it's just a matter of kind of watching the bubbles. That's really what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to just seal it so that when I do, and I'll do a small flood coat on here. When I do that, it actually I don't have to fight bubbles on the last flood coat. That's really what the seal coat's for. Is to just ensure that you don't have bubbles when you do the flood coat. So that's really the role here. It's also why you put the sanding sealer on. Because, by the way, if I would not put the sanding sealer on here, this thing would just be covered with bubbles, and I'd be running out of butane fuel. As it is, I kind of need to watch some of these cracks. If you notice, they'll probably be the culprit for bubbles. So I'll need to keep kind of an eye on them. If you do notice, it is sort of taking its time, self-leveling. It's still kind of wavy. There's a good bubble right there. A bubble like that could ruin your whole system. If you go watch my mesquite video for the little corner tables, you can actually see where I talk about the fact that I had one bubble, one location with one bubble that was just productive like that, and it literally ruined the entire pour. I had to sand the whole thing down and then fill in that little bubbly hole right there because it really did. It ruined the entire pour. It was gorgeous too, but unfortunately it was right in the middle, kind of like that one, but it was right at the joints of some pieces, and it just made this massive bubbly stuff because, quite honest, you'll hear the term set off. My epoxy set off, and it was still putting out bubbles, even though I was kind of staying on it. And so then I hit it with some fire, and it just solidified. The bubble come up, the whole thing just solidified. Now, I figured on these knots I was going to have problems with bubbles because I tried to get as much sealant in there as I could, but I knew I couldn't, right? I'm also going to have problems with that, with bubbles. Like I said, these cracks are going to make bubbles. But the rest of it doesn't look too bad. Keep in mind, this is the bottom, right? So, but you can, the other kind of thing I do with this, the reason why I do it kind of this way, is I also want to see how the epoxy affects the wood, because all wood's different. And I may actually hit the top with some Danish oil with some walnut, only because this is looking really pretty, but it's not quite as vivid as I would like it, and that top is very vivid. So I want those colors just to absolutely just leap out at whoever's looking at it. So, and the other piece of this is any runoff, I'm taking a little brush and I'm making sure I smear it along the edges because I want the edges sealed somewhat. The edges will kind of be done both when I do the bottom and the top. Let me hop in here real quick and go grab a brush. The other thing to keep in mind when you use, I already brought the brushes out here, is if you use these little foam brushes, and you should use these little cheap little foam brushes. Kind of watch your tension on them. So see how that's dribbling? Just kind of watch your tension on them. If it starts tugging, you're going to start losing pieces of the brush. So buy a lot of them. Be ready to throw them away pretty quickly, because otherwise you're going to be hunting for little fuzz things. I got a spot over here that leaked all the way down. So the other thing I got to be careful about is I do not want big dimples on the bottom or the top, which is currently sitting on the bottom. So I want to be very careful about that. This has got stuff all over it. I'll eventually just let it dry and peel it off. So yeah, I just got to watch that, make sure that I'm not leaving any dribbles around. See, there's one right there. I can smear that around here a little bit. Probably this end here will probably mostly get done when I do the top. I don't really want to pull the stuff up off the table, so there's some that dribbled off and onto the table, but the table's not that clean. You can get little dust motes and stuff in this, and it'll show for miles. So you kind of have to be careful. Which is going back to what I was saying, is a lot of people put tents and stuff on here. But anyway, this is I probably got a few videos already, but this is what we call the bubble watch. Basically, you just start kind of eyeballing stuff. If you see a little divot there, like I said, it kind of self-levels. You got a little bit of time, though, on this particular epoxy to do something. Right there's a dust mote. So I can get a little pointy object, which I don't have immediately available, but I can get a little pointy object, get it in there, get it taken care of. Get that out. Not that I really care on the bottom, but certainly on the top I got to watch. Looks like these are finally kind of sealing off, which is good. Yeah, when I did the corner table, though, this one here kind of reminds me of it, is I thought I was good and done. I had sat there, chased the bubbles from that corner non-stop, and that next morning I came in. So just keep in mind that this stuff it stays. You know, it takes it a while to cure. It's going to get pretty thick. It hasn't gone off quite yet. Even though it's been several minutes, even just on this video, it's probably been a total of about 12 minutes or so since I actually poured it. Probably about 15 minutes since I actually mixed it up. So it will go off at some point. Air is an amazing thing, and I ended up with just this horrible, ruined-looking piece of junk because of the air. So try to avoid that. I'm going to hit some of the sides here just to make sure I'm not getting any more dribblies. Usually I level these off. I think I talked about that. Usually I try to level them off, but since this is really just a seal coat, it's not really a flood coat, I'll probably leave it as is. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, I'm just doing the seal coat. What I'll do after the fact is I will hit this with some sandpaper and kind of sand it flat so it looks halfway decent. Since it's the bottom, I'm probably really not going to do a whole lot more than that. This may appall some people, but most likely what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get the bottom done here. Then I'll work on seal coating the top, spend a lot of time on it, and probably a lot more than I'm doing here. But we'll do that, and then what I'll do really at that point is I will probably, like I said, sand these down. I'll sand the sides down, and then usually, to be quite honest, I just hit it, come back after with some polyurethane. After I've done the flood coat on the top, I'll come back with some polyurethane and just finish off. And the reason why I do that is I'll try to do a video of this next one. It has to do with the round over at the top and how I deal with that round over, if that makes sense. So just be aware. Yeah, also looks like that is probably about ready to, if it hasn't already, probably about ready to go on me. So that's about as good as that knot hole is going to get. And I hope that little bubble there doesn't grow. So see, that actually already kind of went and set. So it's not smooth at all. So we'll just let that sit, leave it alone. If I keep cooking it, it's just going to get all the worse, and hopefully I don't have a bubble just come screaming out of there. Other than that, this is kind of done. Kind of a long video. I'll probably just post this one by itself. But that is a seal coat. Very pretty wood. Yeah, so I'm looking at all this. Hopefully y'all get to see it. It's kind of funny. I talked about how this is essentially a branch. So when they milled this walnut log, a branch went off that direction. This part right here is part of the actual walnut log. They probably got dimension wood out of it, I'm assuming. They might have milled it for slabs. I doubt it, but They probably, you know, milled it for dimension wood and or cut this piece off for, especially since it had pretty rough cuts on it, right? They may have cut this piece for veneer, you know, off, and then used veneer on the main log. Anyhow or another, this little piece, that's it. There's a on the front part, there's a branch that comes out and probably took off that direction towards the floor if this was standing up, and that's where all that figure comes from. So this wood is all really straight grained because it's off the main trunk. Not a lot of figure, got a little bit of the crotch figure trying to show through right there, so that's kind of pretty considering it's the bottom. So that's kind of neat. The top part of this is highly configured. It's just nuts. So very pretty. The other thing that's interesting to me is these big contrasting light and dark marks that I thought was something I was doing, but they're not. It's actually part of the tree. You can see it here on the back side too. It is on the front. You see how there's a big dark mark there, and then you have the light marks there on the side. You know, kind of a big splotchy looking thing there. That's actually the wood, and it's rather interesting. On the top side, it kind of corresponds with some curl you have, so basically some grain changes, but it's pretty neat. And the walnut's starting to shine out now, so that's really pretty. So I like it. I got a little bit of green in here. Like I said, I kind of did do the sides. I was able to do this side pretty well. I think I got these sides. I'll have to finish them up when I do the top. And then there's just this little lip, so I was able to get that little lip done. There's a little drip right there that I don't want. So that'll get wiped on the paper towel. And other than that, bubble watch is over, so that's kind of it. That's just chasing the bubbles. I'll keep keeping an eye on it. And just kind of watching it off and on, but at this point it's just letting the chemical reaction happen, letting the exothermic reaction kick off and chemical reaction go. And to be quite honest, the more I can get out of the pitcher and stirring up the air over here, the less dust motes I'll have on it too. So I'm going to kind of get out of its way, let it do its thing, and check it out here later.